On June 9th, Boston Red Sox legend David Ortiz was shot in the lower back while he was at a club in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. Ortiz's friend was also wounded by a bullet to the leg. The confirmed gunman is 25-year-old Rafi Ferreira Cruz. Cruz is working with several other people, including his getaway motorcycle driver, Eddie Feliz Garcia. After the shooting, Garcia's motorcycle stalled out and he was beaten up by an angry crowd before being turned over to the police. Cruz was able to escape from the scene on foot but is now in custody. Police believe that the attack on David Ortiz involved at least 12 people and they already have 10 of them in custody. After the shooting, Ortiz was quickly rushed to a nearby hospital where he had emergency surgery. He had to have parts of his intestines and liver removed. Ortiz has now been moved to a hospital in Boston and is expected to make a full recovery.
Bees, while sometimes pesky, are a lot more important than we realize. Bees are considered the #1 pollinator of crops and flowers. Without them, we wouldn't have near as many fruits and vegetables as we do now. But sadly, these very important little creatures are dying at an alarming rate. The rusty-patched bumblebee is already on the endangered list, according to the Fish and Wildlife Service. The loss of bees is caused by habitat damage, climate change, and pesticides. But why do we need bees? Without them, our diet would be very different. Our food choices would lack variety and flavor. Things such as apples, berries, and even coffee would go extinct. Besides that, the prices of certain foods would rise. The loss of pollinators would also affect herbivores, such as cattle. This in turn would lead to a loss of meat and dairy products. Dietary staples like rice, wheat, and corn would still exist, but the world's palate would be cut down immensely. Luckily, there's many ways we can help stop the rapid decline of bees. First, and probably the easiest way, you can put down the weed killer. Letting weeds such as dandelions and clover grow is a simple way to give bees more habitat. If you've got a green thumb, consider planting a bee garden. By planting flowers, you're helping make an oasis for bees to come and pollinate. Last but not least, be aware about what's going on. Spreading the word and educating others is a great way to raise awareness. So next time you're outdoors and there are bees around, remember all that they do for us. Consider planting a flower or two, don't pull weeds from your yard, and think about how you can help spread the word about bees. Without those buzzing little insects, life would be quite boring.
Drunk driving is a phenomenon that has resulted in over 10,000 deaths every year. Alcohol affects a person's judgment, depth perception, and physical reaction time. People lose friends and family to the carelessness of driving under the influence. It can greatly impact a community. I sat down with the sheriff of Grayson County, Richard Vaughn, to get him to talk about drunk driving in the county.
Normally we average about 2 DUI arrests a month. I would have to look back at our annual report, but I'm thinking last year we had about 26 DUI arrests here in the county.
Okay. As the sheriff, how do you feel drinking and driving has impacted the community as a whole?
Drinking and driving affects everyone that's out on the highways, including your family, my family, the citizens of the county. The peak time for driving under the influence is 10 p.m. until 2 a.m. and a lot of times on the weekends. But anybody that's on the highways during that time are at risk by being affected by a drunk driver. You know, whether it's from a traffic crash or just someone swerving across the road, it's very dangerous and can be prevented.
What are some of your personal experiences with it?
Well, many years ago when I was working patrol, I made several DUI arrests. I think my best year working at the Wythe County Sheriff's Office, I had about 12 DUI arrests. One in particular turned into being a pursuit. I pursued a black Trans Am all across Wythe County and ended up wrecking that vehicle. My sheriff, he got on the radio and said, "Are you driving an old vehicle?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I am. It's got about 104,000 miles on it." He said, "Well, next chance you get, just go ahead and take him out." So I ended up wrecking the operator of that vehicle, and he was highly intoxicated, and that's the reason he was attempting to elude police.
Finally, what is some advice for staying safe from drinking and driving?
Well, first of all, if you're going to consume alcohol, have a designated driver. Don't be operating a motor vehicle after drinking. If you're going out to a bar or a public place, don't give somebody your keys. Have a designated driver. Do not put yourself at risk. Do not put your family at risk, and all of our citizens that's on the highway as well. So just don't do it. Give those keys to someone else.
Thank you for taking your time to do this. I really appreciate it. Now let's look at a real-life example of how drunk driving greatly impacted and changed a woman's life. In 1988, Francesca Marino was just 19 years old when a drunk driver struck her car. After the accident occurred, she had to get life-flighted to the hospital where they discovered she had a broken neck. She had to have 2 neck fusions. Her recovery lasted for multiple years and she still has pain today. Her accident affected her friends and family too. She said, "It was a big scare for them and they had to take care of me for a significant amount of time." After the accident, she faced many restrictions to what she was able to do. She wasn't able to do most physical activities such as softball, a sport she had played most of her life. Because she was so affected by the accident, I wondered how she felt towards the driver. She told me, "In the beginning, I was very bitter, but I have now forgiven him for my own sake." When I asked how she felt about how even after all these fatalities and injuries due to driving under the influence have occurred, yet they are still happening today, she answered, "It's very troublesome to say the least. People who drink should never drive. In today's world, with Ubers and a ride at the touch of a phone, there should be no drinking and driving." I think we can all agree with Francesca, and I hope that no one watching will have to learn this the hard way.
Theodore Robert Bundy is still one of the most notorious serial killers to this day, a full 30 years after his death. He confessed to the murders of 30 women, though some people think it may be in the hundreds. He was taken into police custody after being pulled over for running a stop sign, when the policeman who pulled him over saw what was described as suspicious items in the floorboard of his passenger seat. After that, he was charged with attempted kidnapping and managed to escape police custody twice. Bundy had stated that since he was allowed to help with his own defense, he was able to walk around freely. And
over the months, I'd noticed a number of opportunities to just walk right out. I'd thought a great deal about escape, and I didn't know if I had the guts to do it, quite frankly.
And on June 7, 1977, he did.
The guard went outside for a smoke. The windows were open, and the fresh air was blowing through, and the sky was blue. And I said, "I'm ready to go," and I walked to the window and jumped out. Honest to God, I just got sick and tired of being locked up.
His trial was the first ever nationally televised murder trial. He was finally sentenced to death for the rape and murder of Kimberly Leach, who was only 12 years old. 5 hours before his death, he had called his mother in Tacoma, Washington to say goodbye, and she said that he sounds very much at peace with himself. At 7:01 a.m., he walked into the death chamber, and he seemed nervous. Then, at 7:04, he made his last statement. "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." Then, at 7:16 on the morning of January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was pronounced dead.
After the recent rescue of 2 Allegheny County men from a caving expedition gone awry, it has gotten people wondering on just what caving entails and if it is safe. To help dispel any uncertainties anyone might have and to help inform us on just what caving really is, a professor at Wytheville Community College and also a local avid caver, Mr. Gross. It's so nice to have you here today with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
And to get right into it for our viewers, what first got you interested in caving? Is it still why you do it today?
Yes and no. I think what first got me, at least started in it, as a kid, we used to, my friends and I, we used to dare each other to crawl through the culverts under the streets. Growing up, getting older, I'm also a history teacher at the college. So I kind of think of myself more as almost like Neil Armstrong, you know, as a caver. You got the opportunity to go somewhere that most people have never been and never will be. And you occasionally have the rare opportunity to perhaps be the first and sometimes maybe even the only person to see something or visit something underground.
Well, that just sounds amazing.
It's fun.
Well, to continue, how do you stay safe while you're caving?
That's a good question. Caving can be as safe as you want to make it. When you reference these fellows from Allegheny County, they did just about everything wrong that they could have done. They had no safety equipment, no backup lights. They didn't tell anybody where they were going. They were in too small of a party. Good rule of thumb is to always have at least 3 people caving. More is better. Another good rule of thumb is to always tell people where you're going, what time you're going to be back, so that if you don't make that call out time, they can call for someone to come find you. The other parts of it have to do with equipment, having the proper equipment, and some proper caving protocol. Proper equipment entails always having a helmet, like the one I have here, with a helmet-mounted light. We have recommendations that every caver should have at least 3 sources of light. One mounted on their helmet, a secondary backup light for their head, and a third light that's either handheld or headlamp. In my caving pack, I always carry spare batteries, a little bit of food. I carry things to try and stay warm with. The other thing when we talk about protocol is stay together when you're in a cave. Don't run or jump. Most injuries happen because of slips and falls. The other thing is if you do find yourself separated from your group or if you do get lost, is to stay put where you are. The guys that got lost in the Lowmore Cave up in Allegheny County, they wandered around for hours, circling back and forth, rather than just sitting tight and waiting for someone to come. So those are some basics. There are other things that you can learn as you continue to go on that make your trip more enjoyable. But if you follow those basic rules, have the basic equipment, there's no reason you shouldn't have a fun time underground.
That's very good. For my third question, how would you recommend anyone who's interested in caving to get started in it?
Well, that's an easy question. I recommend you contact your local grotto. Grottos are small local clubs that are affiliated with the National Speleological Society. It's a nationwide group of cavers. There are tens of thousands of cavers involved with this. And while that sounds like a lot, caving is actually a pretty small, pretty tightly knit community. So if you want to get involved with it, you can go to the NSS website, which is simply caves.org. You can click on your state, and from there you can find a local grotto that should have some pretty current contact information. Reach out to them, go to the meetings, get to know the people, and in no time flat, they'll have you underground and caving safely.
Sounds very good. And to help wrap these questions up, do you have any extra tips or just words of wisdom for our viewers?
Cave safe.
Yep.
Cave softly. No damage. Leave the cave as you found it when you come in.
Sounds good. That'll be all for today, Mr. Gross. Thank you for your time. With all those safety concerns cleared up and with some of your interests piqued, get up on out there and start exploring those caves.